So already from 2-week campaign, I'm going to, if not hit my goal, I'm going to be, at least halfway towards it. And in fact, the only reason I've pulled back on the campaign a little bit now is because we ran out of the free uniforms, got close to it. So I've got more on order when they had. We'll be back into it. So that goal, which I thought was, let's be a bit audacious and try and double, I have a suspicion we're going to hit that fairly quickly.
Hi, this is George Free, and welcome to another Martial Arts Media business podcast. Today I'm with Mike Fooks, and we're going to do a bit of a combination here. I got to know Mike through one of the online communities that I'm part of, and we built a new website for him, which you can check out at groundcontrol.net.nz. Mike's based in Auckland, and we got started with helping him with the Martial Arts Media Academy program, where we help martial arts school owners with lead generation and so forth. And besides that, Mike's got a very interesting story with things that he does in the corporate world and how that overlaps with the martial arts school. So this is going to be a fun conversation. So welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Thanks, George. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. So based in Auckland, probably going to come and visit you September this year. So I guess just to start things off, who is Mike Fooks?
Okay, so I spend my time doing a number of different things. So obviously I'm a martial arts school owner. We run an academy called Ground Control, where we focus on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts. That's been going for about 11 years now under that name. I've been training for a little bit longer than that before we named the school. But that's not my full-time gig. So during the day, I spend most of my time doing corporate training, so working with sales teams and leaders and various people, primarily on face-to-face persuasive communication, whether that's sales or influence or negotiation, or even internal communication and conflict management, those sorts of things. And also a lot on mindset and resilience. I'm trained at university in psychology, and then went on and got qualified in neurolinguistics or NLP over a number of years. And then based on that, my partner and I have a private practice where we do individual work with people one-on-one, sort of coaching, counseling, therapeutic type stuff. I always say whether it's therapy or coaching just depends how messed up they are when they walk in the door, but hopefully it's all the same by the time they walk out. And so that's another thing I spend my time doing. So sometimes people say to me, wow, Michael, that's a lot you've got going on. But to me, it's actually really simple. When people ask me, what do you do? I'm a coach. My job is to bring out potential in others, and I just do that in various formats. Sometimes I do that in the boardroom, in the training room. Sometimes I do that in my coaching room. And, of course, sometimes I do that on the martial arts mat.
That's an interesting philosophy. So, yeah, it sounds like many things happening, but as you mentioned, you kind of trying to achieve the same result with people that you work with, just through a different medium.
Yeah, that's right. And there's often a little bit of leakage between the two things. I often get frustrated when I'm teaching corporates, for example, because I'm going, look, there's so many great examples of what I'm talking about if you just knew jiu-jitsu. And certainly on the jiu-jitsu mat, there's concepts that I will teach corporates about communication or how to problem solve, which make it into, our coaching sessions at Ground Control. So there's a little bit of leakage involved.
So have you ever then cross-promoted? If you feel... Do you cross-promote between the corporate training that you do and jiu-jitsu?
I have to be a little careful on that because the sponsors that get me involved to, upskill the sales team would probably take a dim view if they felt I was using that as a platform to cross-promote jiu-jitsu. Having said that, inevitably I tell a couple of jiu-jitsu stories or metaphors, and it's not unusual for somebody to tap me on the shoulder afterwards and say, hey, have you got more information on that? I'll be keen to have a look. So that certainly happens.
All right, interesting. So now, how did you get started in jiu-jitsu, first and foremost?
Well, if we go all the way back, as a kid, I did the standard dabbling in martial arts. I think a couple of lessons of judo when I was about 6 and 2 lessons of karate when I was 13. But I got started seriously in my martial arts career in another style, Aikido, which I started in 1993. I'd always been interested in martial arts, watched all the movies, but got intrigued by this idea of Aikido based on a conversation I had with a friend of my brother's who was into judo and karate, and showed me a basic kind of immobilization, arm lock, and then talked about how Aikido guys, that's what they do to anything like that, just immobilize you. I'm like, wow, that sounds cool. So I did some research and got involved in Aikido. Now, of course, 1993 was an interesting year to start the martial arts because it was the same year of the first UFC. So I started in April, and towards the end of that year, the first UFC came out, and of course, that just rocked the entire martial arts community, as most of your listeners will be aware. At the time, I was at university, and I was working in a video games parlor to earn some cash part-time. So I would sit on the desk and just load myself up with, 5 different martial arts magazines every shift and just devour as much information as I could. And so I was kind of got a front row seat. We didn't have, access to any of the footage or anything like that in New Zealand. But I started to read all of the stuff coming out about the UFC and what does it mean that, it seems like the stand-up fighters aren't doing so well. And I got curious about that. And then I got onto Usenet, onto the old news groups, before we had online forums or anything like that, let alone Facebook. And there were all these debates that sprung up about my style is better than yours. And I started out 100% in the traditional martial artist camp. Well, a true Aikido master would never debase themselves by entering such a competition, that kind of thing. But over time, I noticed something really interesting. When people are having these debates about what works, what doesn't, what I consistently noticed, it was the BJJ guys that were saying, well, where are you? Let's get together. Let's find out. And not necessarily in an overly aggressive way, although there's always a little bit of that sometimes. But for a lot of them, it was just, we can show you. I'm completely confident that I know how this will go. And over time, as I sat there by now, about, I think, a second-degree black belt in Aikido, I was thinking, I'm not sure I've got that same level of, I definitely know how this is going to go confidence that these people seem to have. So I got really curious about that. And then in 2001, for the first time, New Zealand showed MMA on TV. Sky TV over here ran a weekend where they played back-to-back Pride and King of the Cage events, old ones. I was on honeymoon that weekend overseas, so I had my new brother-in-law set up in my living room with a VCR player swapping tapes over. And so when I got back, I just devoured it and found a BJJ school, within a month or two after that, which at the time was not easy in New Zealand because there really wasn't a lot going on. Certainly no black belts around, so it was early days for sure.
All right, awesome, interesting journey. So now you've got the school, and I guess let's backtrack a bit. So before I met you, and sort of where's the school up to at this point in time?
Yeah, so we gave ourselves a name in 2006. Up until then it had been the standard thing, a bunch of people trained in my garage. Most of those my Aikido students who had said, hey, have a look at this, and then, hey, let's do more of this and come to the garage, because I was training them consecutively at the time. That was something that we knew as Mike Club, was what we called it, because we were supposed to talk about it outside of Mike Club. And then over time that grew and grew and grew, and we started to get more and more professional. My coach, John Will, runs a competition every September called The Gathering. And the first time I went to that, one of the things he had done for the school owners was get a bunch of Australian school owners together, I think it's about 5 of them, to give us some tips. I remember, Ferris Levy was there, and a few other people. Frank was there, and so I came away with like 48 action items about how do we make this thing more professional. And then over time we got more and more so. So by the time we hit kind of end of 2017, I'm running a school which is muddling along all right. It's a part-time school. I'd kind of got to the point where I had realized that, look, I'm only part-time on this. It's never going to be a huge money spinner for me. If I can break even and get a little bit of pocket money, but keep the thing going, that's pretty cool. So 30 students on contract, and then with various people coming through, beginners trials of various sorts that we had. And I was probably content to leave it sitting there, except for a conversation that I had with a guy, Trent Rice, who some people know as Bear in the jiu-jitsu community. He was over from Australia to do some work for his day job. And he said, yeah, I want to come train. Can I come along? I said, sure. So we met each other on the ferry from town back to where I live. And we had a chat, and he was just in the process of looking at going full-time into martial arts. And he mentioned, one of the online communities that he was involved with, which is, where we hooked up. And it started to occur to me that, hey, look, I don't have a full-time brain to put on this. But if I can start to connect with people that are thinking about this full-time and have figured out what works and what doesn't and just do what they say, maybe I can actually start to make some gains I'd kind of, put away on the shelf in terms of ambition for a little while. So I started to get quite excited at that idea. And, over the last, even just last month or so since we've really started firing, it's really started to get quite exciting.
Fantastic. And full credit to the community. That's Paul Veltman's martial arts business community.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'd seen various things like that throw up on my Facebook feed from time to time, and I was always a bit suspicious about, there's a lot of people out there making money off telling people how to make money, but don't necessarily make money the other way. So the fact that that Trent knew Paul personally, and he logged in and he showed me some of the stuff that was going on, gave me a lot of comfort that, hey, this is going to be worthwhile. It's the investments I've made around things like that community, the website, and the Martial Arts Media Academy are paying themselves back very, very quickly and very, very easily.
Cool. So let's have a look. So we made some changes with. So first and foremost, got you set up with a new website. I'm a fan, obviously, of all the websites that we create, but I'm really a fan of the Ground Control website, just how it came out in the end. I mean, it took a while for us to really fine tune and get through the obstacles, but for a jiu-jitsu website, it brings out a lot of color, and I'm using it as an example within the BJJ community, for websites that we are developing. So we got you set up with the right tools, and then you got started in the Martial Arts Media Academy. Before you got started, what type of lead generation were you doing on the internet?
Yeah, not a lot, to be honest. Most of our stuff came through word of mouth, or maybe they'll find us in a Google search. I had dabbled in Facebook, so I'd sort of done the odd promotion here and there. Start of the year, come in half price, or come in and your friend trains for free, or something like that. And they would bring in maybe 4 or 5 people, 2 of which might hang around, and we thought that was a pretty good job. When I did those sort of promotions, I wasn't throwing too much spend at it, very conservative, because I wasn't kind of quite sure how much they'd pay off. So I dabbled, but it hadn't really amounted to too much.
Okay, and then all right. So you got started in the training. What part has helped the most? And then we'll talk about what you're doing right now that's really working as well.
Yeah, I think in terms of what parts help the most, I mean, it's all helping, but I think just starting to feel like I can navigate my way through things. So when I'd had a dabble before, you go into the ad manager in Facebook, and there's all these different options, what's the objective of your campaign, this, that, or the other. And so I was kind of like, well, click, 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 that'll do. So to be able to kind of sit down and have you kind of working through some stuff live and go, oh, okay, so I want interaction, and I know the reasons why I want interaction now, and, actually being able to figure out how those consoles work and why I would make certain decisions when we have those sorts of choices. That was a huge help, because it's the ability to kind of be walked through your first time is where you get your understanding from. People can throw theory at you all day, but when you actually start, I literally had you on one screen while I had the thing on the other screen going, and now I'll click on that. Okay, now I'll click on that. And with the content creation as well, in terms of, here's how you design your ad, and this is what the copy should look like, and all of that stuff made me much more focused, I think, in what I was doing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's I guess there's a biggest pain point for me, or frustration. It makes me want to rant, and I don't really rant, but it makes me want to rant, is theory without substance. There's a lot of, you should do this, but there's not, here's how to do it. And a lot of the times, the people that are talking the what are not actually doing the how. So you can buy into a concept of coaching where you can't actually be shown how to do it. You can just, you should get another guy to do it. Us.
Yeah, and that's right. And when I think about it as you talk just now, it's exactly how we teach martial arts. I don't show a bunch of beginners a move and then say, good luck, go and try it out, right? I show them the move and then I talk them through each individual step to make sure they're on the same path. So it kind of felt like that I was being given, hey, here's what you should do and why, but now here's the bit where I'm going to talk you through each step and I can, play along. And before I know it, I've got an ad campaign running.
That's it. And then, of course, it's one thing to be walked through, but then that's where, and the same as in martial arts, now you know how to do it, but now you apply it and it doesn't work the way you actually experienced it. And that's, I guess, where the key part comes in. What we really try and focus on in the academy is, all right, you've implemented, now let's correct. Let's see if we can fine tune. Let's see if we can fix things and get them working in the end.
Yeah, that's right, and that's where I think the value of those, because we've got a lot of content about here's how to set up Facebook and here's how to develop content and AdWords and all these sorts of things. But the coaching calls are really, really valuable as well, because you can come along and go, well, this is what I'm doing right now. This is what's relevant for me, and ask a few questions. And there's always really good content generated, whether it's from my own questions or other people's. So I think those live coaching calls are really valuable, and really valuable to get on live rather than just watching the recording sometimes as well, because you come up with questions that you wouldn't have asked, other people don't necessarily ask. So that's really cool.
So awesome. So what, you were having some good results with your campaigns in the beginning of the year. Where are you at with your campaign?
Yeah, so when I first signed up to Paul Veldman's group, the first thing I saw him say is, you set some goals. I thought, well, I know about setting goals. I teach people about that, so I better do one. And so I went, look, let's be, what on paper sounds fairly ambitious, even though we're starting from a small base. Let's look to double membership, and let's look to do it relatively quickly. So 30 people on contract, let's take that to 60. That would be good. So once the website was up and I started the Facebook campaign, I ran that campaign for about 2 weeks, no more than that. And at last count, I think we've got close to 35 paid trials. So over the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll start to see how many of those paid trials tip over into full membership. But certainly the feedback I'm getting from the people on the trial is that they're loving it. So we should convert a reasonable amount of those. So already from 1 2-week campaign, I'm going to, if not hit my goal, I'm going to be, at least halfway towards it. And in fact, the only reason I've pulled back on the campaign a little bit now is because we ran out of the free uniforms, got close to it. So I've got more on order when they had. We'll be back into it. So that goal, which I thought was, let's be a bit audacious and try and double, I have a suspicion we're going to hit that fairly quickly.
That's awesome. So you've gone from, you started off with 30 students, although you've got them in trial. So you've kind of doubled, but not obviously, proofs down the line where things are at.
Yeah, that's right. I'm fairly confident because our retention rate from trial into full membership tends to be pretty good. Having said that, I have redesigned how that whole thing works based on the advice I've got from you and Paul and various people. Like, this is the first time we've used paid trials, which I think there's a lot of hesitation about for people that are used to going, hey, free week, to go to paid trial. Certainly in New Zealand, I don't see a lot of that going on, but it's worked really, really well for us. And so the fact they've got that skin in the game, and I know we can give them a really good experience over 4 weeks, it's going to be really interesting to kind of look back in 4 weeks' time or so and go, okay, what was our conversion rate? But I'm expecting it to be pretty solid.
That's awesome. That's really good going. Well done. That's awesome. So, and I'm thinking now that the fact that you've run out of when you said you ran out of uniforms, I'm like, all right, that's those create perfect conversations for your marketing campaigns as well. Sorry, yeah. You've sold out. Here's a waiting list. We'll let you know when the next batch comes in. And then that creates a whole new urgency campaign for your next follow-up, because, people missed out. Now they've got to jump on board, and they've only got, they missed out the last time. They better, they better jump
Actually,
on.
that's a really good point. Literally, just before we came on this call, I got a message pop up from because we had like over 200 people message us with an expression of interest. So I've got all of those leads that I still need to go back to and say, hey, you still interested? But one of them popped up and said, hey, is this thing still on? So I was about to go back and say yes, and just I really hope you're not a size 5. But yeah, that's a really good point. We can go, well, actually we've sold out, but over the next 2 weeks we might launch it again, so just look out.
Yeah, waitlist, awesome. I like that.
Nice.
Good stuff. Okay, so just a couple of things, and just for as part of the case study, of course, of the Martial Arts Media Academy program, who would you recommend it to, and why?
Well, pretty broad, martial arts school owners that want to grow, because I think there's a lot of people. So my school, for example, we're focused on adults. I know just a lot of the schools around have got a real kids focus. But that hasn't made any difference to me in terms of the quality of the content. It's all completely applicable. By the standards of some schools, we're relatively small, so I know a lot of people would look at the initial outlay and go, oh, that must be for really big professional schools. That's not us. But in some ways, I think it's even more useful for people our size because, I don't have time to really think about the stuff and figure it out. So I was kind of groping in the dark a little bit. And in terms of, what it costs to get on the program, you make that back with a couple of students pretty quickly. So I'm really interested as I look around the New Zealand scene. There's not a lot of people taking a sophisticated approach to this. And when I look at the results that I've had, part of that may be that my competitors just aren't doing it this way. So I think anyone that really wants to grow and stay up with the game or ahead of the game, it's really worthwhile. You do have to put some time commitment into it. The financial investment's probably the easier thing. The time investment is the really important thing. There's so much great content in there that you're going to have to go through it a few times. I've got notes scrawled everywhere and then go back to a recording as I'm doing a particular campaign. So as long as people are prepared to put the time investment in, I struggle to think of a school that wouldn't benefit from it unless the person themselves is already pretty sophisticated in not just marketing but specifically online marketing. But I don't see a lot of that in martial arts.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. And you bring up a good point on time because there's time spent and then there's time well spent. Because either way, you're going to have to spend the time. You're going to have to spend the time to do the marketing. And you can take an hour to do a okay or really mediocre job at your marketing, get frustrated, not know where to ask for help. The biggest danger of that is reaching a level of frustration where you just, this online stuff is crap, or just I don't have time to deal with this, I'm not going to do it, and you abandon the whole thing and your business suffers. Or what's worse is people get a call from a company that says, hey, we can get you on the first page of Google, and they got no sense of an actual overall strategy that you need for your school. And again, it could be the easy way out because you can just pay money. But if they don't know the overall strategy, they're just catering for one touch point, which is search, the search engines, where you've got to cover for all 6 to 8 interactions that's going to happen before conversion. So you got to be covering all the steps. So if you get educated, get a bit of a strategy, it's easy to spend money on getting the hands to get people to do stuff, as long as you actually know what to do and what to look out for at the end of the day.
I think that's really right. I think if I had decided, look, I really want to put some focus into growing the school, I'm going to really spend some time over, January to do that, but I'm going to do it myself. What probably would have happened is I'd have sat down with my partner, Carly, and we would have spent maybe even as much time, maybe even more time, but we would have spent it on completely the wrong stuff. Let's design this ads and let's get really finicky over how the image looks and really kind of, tweak that to the nth degree. When in actual fact, it was much better just to go, well, let's just blast out 5 images, 3 for BJJ, 2 for MMA, split test them, see what works, and after a couple of days, we know what the winner is. And as you had indicated, it's always the one that surprises you. It's not the one I would have picked. So, a lot of those sorts of things, which would have sucked a lot of our time trying to finesse stuff that could have been done a lot more simply, and then that time spent put back to more things. And what I like about the Academy is you just kind of alluded to is the comprehensiveness of it. What I'm excited about is we've got these results already just from one Facebook campaign. Now, we've got some professional videos that have been done, which are going to land sometime this week. So I'm already excited about how we're going to introduce them, let alone through email campaigns and getting our content strategy and AdWords working properly. And, we've got this much growth, but we've really just scratched the tip of the iceberg.
That's exciting. Yeah, look, I'd look forward to seeing the videos and really looking at a few things that we're trialing right now with all the new changes within Facebook and how to really get that message out. Awesome. Hey Mike, it's been great having you on. Is there anything I should have asked you that I haven't covered?
Is there anything that you shouldn't have asked me?
I know it's sort of that question that people ask when they think they haven't asked enough questions.
I mean, the only thing I guess I'd add, thinking about the most recent campaign that we've done, and it comes back a little bit to the commitment thing, is it's one thing to throw up an ad, and I kind of came into both Paul's group and your group hoping for, you tell me how to automate everything so I can just press go and walk away and the club will just go boom. And of course, it doesn't work that way. So, we aimed for interaction, which meant that I was every day, once or twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, having to log in and go, oh, look, there's another 30 responses here. I've got to go back and respond to each one. Now, the response was pretty easy. It was a cut and paste into a PM. But just be really disciplined about that, because it's one thing to put up a shop front and say, this is a really great shop, come and look in the window. But if you're not providing something quality in terms of experience when they get there, then it's all for naught. So, the Machado brothers had an expression in jiu-jitsu, swim, 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 die on the beach. You don't want to have to do all that work and then just fall at the last hurdle through not doing your follow-through and your responsiveness and those sorts of things really well. Probably the one thing that I would have done differently if I went back, and even though I'd heard warnings about this from yourself, from Paul, I don't think I had got my admin geared up well enough to handle the sudden influx of people. So we've given them a pretty good experience signing in, but there's just a couple of things I've seen fall through the cracks. Not everyone's got their membership card, or they haven't all been given the beginner's manual for some reason. So looking forward, next time I start to run campaigns, I'm really going to make sure that all that stuff's locked in and ready to go, because it kind of caught me by surprise how many people signed up so quickly.
Very good point on a few things. The messaging, I see a lot of people want to automate too quickly. And I hear, I see in communities, people get frustrated about the mundane responses that they got to give, but there's a big lesson in those mundane responses. And yeah, look, sometimes people are just ignorant, but you always got to look at your marketing and your message and say, all right, why is this coming up all the time? If everybody's asking what your location is, hey, then just put at the end, conveniently located in suburb. That might just cover it. So you gotta pay attention to what people are asking, and those are the objections that you can turn into better marketing the next time. So it's all about learning. And I see people too quick to want to automate it. And I always say, you can't automate something that's not working manually. If you can't sell your membership face-to-face or in a text message, then no chatbot or anything's going to do that magically for you. Your conversion's going to go down. So master that first, and then you can go and add all the automation, but you've got to get the conversion right first. And I mean, when the offer converts, everything else works. You can go tweak everything else, but getting that offer to convert first, that's the real art, and that's the real work. And if you can focus just on that, then you can get fancy, and then you can start taking your campaigns to a higher level if that's really what you want to do, and really scale it up for the next school or opening multiple schools and so forth.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Hey, Mike, it's been great chatting to you. So people can find out more about you at groundcontrol.net.nz. And anywhere else people can find more info about you?
There's a little bit about my corporate stuff on my other website, which is kineticpotential.co.nz. So the stuff about the individual coaching and the corporate work I do there is on there. So yeah, those are the two places to find me.
Awesome. I think we could probably do a round two and go really, really deep into some psychology stuff and things that you do in your day job and how that connects with your martial arts. And then if you are interested in the Martial Arts Media Academy, where you watch this, you can just send us a message, or you can go to martialartsmedia.academy and find out more about that. Mike, great speaking to you face to face for the first time. And I will see you in Auckland this year.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, George.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike.